MSNBC.
Is the debt troublesome? Sure it is. I worry about exogenous shocks to the system, where if something happens specifically or particularly overseas that caused some type of crisis, typically we'd be able to fall back on our borrowing ability to sort of get us through that. And I don't know if you can do that when you're $22 trillion in debt. At the same time, I'll be the first to admit that I've been complaining about the debt since I ran in 2009. It doesn't seem to be holding us back from an economic standpoint yet.
As the LA Times headline puts it, one-time deficit hawk Mulvaney says soaring U.S. debt isn't holding us back. Let's bring in right now the deputy whip for the Republican Conference, Congressman Tom Cole of Oklahoma. He's also the ranking member of the House Rules Committee. Now, Congressman, I find this especially rich, and you and I may be able to relate on this, because people like me, when I was in Congress, was a pain in the ass for people like you. Just like Mulvaney was a self-righteous pain in the ass, just like I was, for people like you, always preaching about how you didn't care about the deficit and the debt and the world was coming to an end. I'm not just mocking Mulvaney, I'm mocking myself, because that's been my issue. I'm from that wing of the conservative movement. You know, not everybody is. I'm just wondering, how do you feel watching this flamethrower, this deficit hawk, say $22 trillion, maybe it's bad, maybe it's not. Who am I to say?
Well, Joe, let me start off by saying you can still be a pain, so that's okay. We need people like that, by the way. Look, Mick's my friend. Obviously, he's arguing a position he's not very comfortable with and doesn't believe in. Now, he works for the President of the United States. It's his job to defend the policies of the President, even when he doesn't agree with them. I have no doubt privately he disagrees pretty profoundly on some of the spending decisions and the failure to address entitlement reform. But no question, given his background, it's an awkward spot for him to be in.
So let me ask you this, Congressman. I may no longer be a Republican, but I'm still a conservative.
We'll welcome you back with open arms.
Well,
we think you are a Republican.
I hope one day, well, we'll talk about this later. But what do you say to conservatives like myself who are still deficit hawks, who are still so concerned about the national debt? We Republicans failed from 2001 to 2009 when we controlled Washington to control the debt. The Republicans are failing to do that again. Can you give conservatives who are deficit hawks like me some hope that perhaps that $22 trillion debt at least will be slowed down?
I can. You know, we actually lowered the deficit the last 2 years. We were in the majority in 07 and 08 pretty substantially. And we lowered it again from $1.4 trillion in 2010 down to less than $500 billion in 4 years immediately after. Now, we did that by restraining...
And that was the sequestration, which, of course, I supported. But now, boy, all of those spending caps have been blown to pieces. So where do we go now?
Well, we have to go to entitlement reform. Look, we are spending less on defense and military operations today than we were in 2010. We're spending less on non-defense than we were in 2010. So that's 9 years. What we haven't tackled is Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. Those are the things that are unbalancing the budget. And until the last president didn't want to deal with them, this president doesn't want to deal with them. I've actually got what I think is a good bipartisan bill on Social Security. Go back and do what Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill did together and fund this program. But you got to have the courage to go after entitlement spending. And one of my concerns with my friends on the Democratic side is they're actually going further down that road. They're proposing Medicare for all right now. We had a hearing on it yesterday in the Rules Committee. Look, that would add $32 trillion of spending to the federal budget. It would increase the annual budget from about $4.5 trillion to $7.7 trillion in literally a matter of 2 years. So we haven't learned our lesson yet that if we're going to have all these things, Medicare, Medicaid, let alone Medicaid for all, you're going to have to start paying for them. And the bill that we dealt with didn't even have any provision, no tax provisions, nothing as to how we would pay for this.
Well, it's like when the Republicans passed Medicare Part D, the drug benefit plan. It was a $7 trillion plan. Didn't figure out how to pay for it. Let me ask you about while we're talking about money, and we'll get to Barr in a second, but we've been talking about that all morning. I'm curious about the infrastructure plan that Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and Donald Trump put together, the broad outlines, at least, broad spending outlines, $2 trillion. I think most of us believe that our infrastructure is dilapidated. Our airports, our bridges, our roads need to be fixed. How can we pay for that $2 trillion? I think we should. As a fiscal hawk, I still think we should. How do we pay for that $2 trillion bill, though?
If you're going to do it, and the numbers all well and good, but you put your finger on the problem until you say I'm going to pay for it, doesn't matter. You'd have to look first at the gasoline tax. Second, I think you would have to figure out ways to begin to tax electric vehicles and CNG. They pay no road tax now, and they're an ever-growing part of the fleet. And finally, you'd have to probably look at some additional money as well in other areas. So that's a big, bold item, and what I'm waiting for is for somebody to tell me how you're going to actually write this $2 trillion check, because I don't think you can put this on the national credit card.
So let me ask you about William Barr. He's coming to the Hill today. We've been concerned. I've been concerned about his testimony in the House, where he seemed to offer, at the very least, misleading comments to Charlie Crist. Are you concerned, as a chairman on the Hill, about administration officials misrepresenting positions to your committees?
Look, I'm a creature of Congress. I'm always skeptical of the executive branch. Doesn't matter who happens to head it up. But that's why we have these kind of hearings. Obviously, the Attorney General will have a chance to answer any questions that Congress wants to put to him. I think that's a good thing. And so we'll just wait and see what he has to say when that very question that you just framed is posed to him directly by a member of Congress.
Are you concerned about what you've heard, though? The letter, Robert Mueller's frustrations, the lack of transparency?
I'm concerned on a variety of fronts here. Look, to me, if the special counsel had a concern, he either should have indicted or he should have said very clearly in his report, look, I would have indicted other than we have a Justice Department policy that presents. He didn't say that. He actually left it to the Justice Department to make the determination. He knew who the Attorney General was. He knew who the Deputy Attorney General was. Yeah, he did.
Did he do that, or was he actually leaving it to Congress to make that determination?
Well, he said he left it to the Justice Department. Now, again, Congress is free to make that determination. There's no question about that.
Right.
And I think Mr. Mueller, frankly, deserves a lot of credit for releasing as much of the report as he has. It's caused a great deal of consternation up here. Obviously, if my friends on the other side want to proceed, they're free to do that. But I think in the end, if Mueller wanted to flag something, he should have been a little bit clearer than he was. And this sort of complaining after the fact, when you knew who you were turning the report over and you knew what the likely determination was going to be, strikes me as, trying to have it both ways.
So, Congressman, let's just, we want to apply this retroactively when I ask you this question. I'm just curious whether you agree with me that this Justice Department guideline that a president can shoot somebody middle of Fifth Avenue and let's say the Democratic president next and not be indicted, do you find that guideline troubling?
I do. Look, I don't think anybody's above the law. That includes the President of the United States. And so I don't know how the Justice Department came to that conclusion. I'm not an attorney, but it seems to me we're either a country of laws or we're not, and we're all subject to the laws. That includes the president.
All right, Congressman, thank you so much. Tell me one good thing about your state. Tell me one thing about Oklahoma right now. What's going on there? What's going on this summer?
We're going to turn your second-string quarterback from Alabama into the third Heisman Trophy winner in a row from the University of Oklahoma. Man. Take it to the bank.
Good luck with that. I'll tell you what,
he's a great guy, by the way. He is a great guy.
He's a great quarterback. He's a great guy, and I'll tell you the thing I liked about him the most was he was such a team player throughout the entire year.
He's a total class act.
Oh, total class act.
We're lucky to have him.
Yeah, you are. And it's sad that we've lost him, but I certainly understand why he'd leave. Thank you so much, Congressman, for being with us.
Thank you.
Up next, of the top 4 Democrats in